for all of my darlings who still stay in Los Angeles, who still live there, the reason I refer to it as an insidious virus is because you don't get that you caught it.
Ian, David, and Quinn started out to make a $50 million movie based on Ian's book, TJ's War. Mark, Sia, and Sincera soon jumped on board, and then Mr. Z joined the team, a mysterious executive producer who said, "Stop, this is no movie. This is a 2-season, 20-episode TV show. So follow us, join us as we create TJ's War, the $50 million TV series."
All right, welcome back to another. We're going to make a $50 million TV series. We're not going to. We're making it. We're in the process. We're making a $50 million TV series. And this is the podcast that documents it, and where we talk to people who've taken wild creative steps, survived the madness, and somehow come out on the other side with their sanity mostly intact. Today, we're joined by someone who knows that madness better than most. Jennifer, I'm sorry, is it Fiedler? Fiedler. I should have checked that long before
Hi,
right
Jennifer.
now. Jennifer spent years deep inside the Hollywood machine, high pressure sets, toxic execs, demanding actors, and all the ego and chaos that come with it. On paper, it was a success, the career, the paychecks, the prestige, but behind the scenes, she was running on fumes. Is that correct? Is that too embellished? Okay. Well, but then she walked away, not just from a job, but from the entire Hollywood identity. What followed was a 10-year, 4-continent adventure that took her from film sets in LA to creative projects in Warsaw and Kiev, teaching Hollywood filmmaking to Eastern European professionals and rediscovering her own sense of purpose along the way. Is that the nutshell version? Does that sound about right?
I would say so. I would more classify the exit strategy as burnout. Just like couldn't stand the pretense and the bullshit anymore. But yeah, pretty much that's the long and short of it.
So what was then? Let's just launch right into the interview portion here. What was the breaking point when you realized you didn't want to keep going in Hollywood?
Hollywood is a unique city. There's nowhere like that, nowhere else in the world. It's an anomaly, truly, and everyone lives under a microscope of where you go, who you use, what you drive, what your late night run to 7-Eleven for aspirin or condoms or whatever. Like, better be dressed because at any given moment, your career is determined or can be at any moment in time, 24/7. And at some point, we all witness some level, all of us who've chosen to go there and pursue this career, some level of amorality or a lack of ethics, whether that's mental or emotional or psychological. And to the Hollywise, meaning people who've been there and assimilated that new norm, that becomes the new norm. And so when these things, for those of us, I'm from the Midwest, so I wasn't raised by wolves. I was properly raised. And so we all witness some degree of depravity. And when people are Hollywoodized, they forget who they are and where they're from and who their family is, and they just get sucked into this because it's an industry that requires total, utter devotion and boundless ambition, and you do whatever you got to do to get ahead. And so when during award season that behavior pays off, that then becomes the new norm. And as all of us know, the degree of rapidity with which we assimilate circumstances is what differentiates us as humans. So it's like a virus. It's an insidious virus that you catch. And I was pushing it all away for a long time, and my arms got tired. And I was like, fuck it, I'm done.
I can certainly echo the sentiment that, I lived in Los Angeles, and I was not involved in the film industry. I just was in Los Angeles, and I've lived more than a dozen places on this planet, and it LA is by far the most superficial place I've ever lived in. Like, it just, I mean, I don't want to sit here and trash LA for our Los Angeles listeners, but it really, it just was the most superficial place. Like, you know, you you likened it to getting dressed up to go to 7-Eleven at the middle of the night. I mean, it did feel like everyone was just constantly sizing each other up. And again, I wasn't even in the film industry. Um,
Yeah. But in
you
your
have
defense, I just need to interject here.
sure.
For all of my darlings who still stay in Los Angeles, who still live there, the reason I refer to it as an insidious virus is because you don't get that you caught it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So
That's
that becomes I'm here. You know, it's our version of Wenny Weddy Wiki, right? I'm here. I came here. I'm doing my thing. And part of doing our thing is catching the virus and playing the game.
well,
And
that's
we
true.
just didn't get that we're doing it, you know?
Right. I could see where people had just been there because I got there, did my time, and got out. But I did see people who'd been there 20 years and like how it had affected them. Well, you have described Hollywood or the industry as both, toxic and glamorous.
Hmm.
So if you had to pick one story that best captures that contradiction, what would it be?
Oh my.
It's my job. I ask tough
Yeah,
questions.
yeah. It's hard for me to pull something out of my magic bunghole that's both of those wrapped up
Right.
in the same candy wrapper.
Mm,
But the toxicity for me, I can only speak personally, and the toxicity for me took the form of what was expected of me in my role. And I was very good at it. And it was a managerial because I ran the set, right? And so I was really good at it and I really liked it. But it drained me because it wasn't who or what I truly am.
mm,
I am a good leader. I'm an outstanding communicator. But the things that I was called upon to manage and deal with, and the way, particularly the way in which that was to be done,
mm.
was not how, left to my own devices, I would ever do that. Right.
Yeah.
So there was very little latitude for me to be me. So it kind of felt like every day at work, I'd put on a suit of armor and I'd go on set. And the eye slits in the visor, the eye slit was very small. So I had a very limited range of vision. And boy, that armor was like really heavy and really hot, and I couldn't see everything and whatever, but I girded myself and wore
Mm,
that. And then I'd wrap for the day and get in my car and, figuratively speaking, remove that armor to reassume my meanness.
hmm,
And it was draining and it was eventually demoralizing.
mm.
And
I can imagine.
uh, I would never, I'm not a proponent of, uh, well, it's a patriarchy and the world is ruled by men and blah, 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 blah. I mean, yeah, it is.
Right.
So fucking deal with it. But I must say that I acquired a really big bag of sharp, shiny tools that I acquired from observing men in the workplace.
Mm,
And the biggest lesson, if you will, from that, or the thing of greatest value to me was women bring emotion into the workplace. It's not a cocktail party, it's work. And there's no room for that. And now we get all precious about, oh, but emotional intelligence. And I'm not talking about emotional intelligence. I'm talking about, as a woman, when you get a drubbing, when you're dressed down by someone, usually a man, you immediately roll into, oh, but well, I thought this, and well, I did it because this and that. Stop talking. Watching a man will listen to that and say, you know what, Mark, you're right. I'm sorry. That will never happen again. And then he makes goddamn certain it doesn't. So this whole need to like defend yourself or explain yourself or what, just stop. Just stop because that's inappropriate. And I understand the desire to do that, but the disconnect is the desire to do that where it meets the lack of efficacy in doing so.
Hmm.
So that's a huge lesson, one of the tools that I acquired joyfully.
Yeah, explain to people what you actually did. Well, like what was the nature of your work? I should have led with that, but what were you doing on the sets?
I was a member of the Directors Guild of America, and I was what's called a first AD, first assistant director. And my department runs the movie.
Mm,
So it kind of manages. Like if we were on the Enterprise, I'd be number one.
right.
Uh, Corporate world, that might be a project manager, maybe. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
and
So I get a script and I break down the script, meaning I outline every actor, every set, every location, every prop, every everything. And using industry specific software, I create a big database of all of those elements. They're referred to as elements. And I use them to create documentation, the most important of which is the schedule for the movie. What I figure out what we shoot when.
mm,
And I'm involved in location scouting and equipment. I don't really deal with money, more logistics and connecting the director with everyone with whom he needs to speak. Because for a director, the most important thing is to extract the contents of his mind to get it to come out his mouth. And that's harder than it sounds. So once we start shooting, I run the set.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
kind of like
I I think I'm as we discussed before we hit record and started this. I'm from Alabama, so that invariably means that I think in terms of college football, and so the we all often look to the head coach like for blame and responsibility, but the what happens is actually the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator run the show. They're actually calling the plays. The head coach is just kind of there as the almost a
right.
figurehead. So I'm using that analogy to describe it. Like in a lot of ways, you're doing a lot of the directing.
Both those coordinators. You go
Mm.
Crimson Tide.
There you
I'm
go.
both
Roll
of those
Tide.
together. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
not the
So
head
in a way,
coach,
you're
but
doing it
I'm
right.
offense and defense. That in my world, those are two guys, not two coaches. That's one person.
Right. Do you do you think that the Hollywood environment shaped you in ways that still serve you today?
Abso-fucking-lutely. And primarily this big bag of sharp, shiny tools that I acquired. Uh, this is yes, yes, in
Mm.
so many ways. I mean, I've always been the queen of time management, and there's a big difference between time management and multitasking, by the way, which is one of my pet peeves. So, multitasking is something some woman said to other women was a good thing. And in our world, multitasking is not a good thing. We assess, we count what we need to do, we prioritize those things, and then we accomplish them, taking one at a time, moving from point A to point B as long as it takes, and then we move on to the next one. Because when we dilute our mental energy in multitasking, nothing really gets done. So that's an example of one of these sharp, shiny tools I acquired because subsequent to my involvement in Hollywood, countless women have, oh, well, I'm an excellent multitasker. Okay, that's as may be. I mean, you've got a husband, you got kids, you got bills to pay, you got a house to run. I get it. But in terms of productivity and effectiveness, that doesn't really work. We need to attack this and accomplish it, attack that and accomplish it. And when we're completely focused and in flow, if we want to use common jargon, we can accomplish quite a bit in a much shorter time than we anticipated. But another kind of side angle of that is you do it till you're done, right? You don't do it like, oh, TikTok, 3 hours. Now I have to move on to the next thing. No, 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 no. You do it till you're done, till you have accomplished, achieved a result. And in that industry in Hollywood, results aren't optional, they're mandatory.
Mm.
I can't go to a producer and say, hey, dude, sorry, man, we just didn't make the day. That's not an option. And so
Yeah.
in the corporate world, it is. There's myriad excuses of, oh, well, I couldn't make the meeting and I was blah, 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 blah. Like, whatever, man. I don't have any of that. We results are mandatory, and that's very empowering.
Empowering that it's mandatory?
Yes,
What do you mean?
you make it happen. That's empowering. I
Oh,
can
okay.
make that
It sounds stressful. Is what the reason I paused there, and I was like, "What do you mean it's empowering?" It sounds like it. In fact, I got the impression that it was the opposite. That like it's mandatory, so you're just constantly under stress. Like I've got to get
you
this
are.
done.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but the ante is raised on all fronts. The
Oh, I
stress
see.
ante is raised, as is the fulfillment, gratification, accomplishment ante is raised because you fucking did it.
Oh, I see. I see. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. Um, your journey. Well, when you walked away from Hollywood, I want to ask, how did you do it? Or, you know, that must have changed your whole identity. What did that feel like? You know, after spending so much time in Hollywood, and then okay, I'm not doing that anymore. How did that work out for you? How was that?
It was a trip. Uh, I had this. I had wrapped a. I didn't wrap. I got thrown off a made-for-TV movie that was run by guys who set me up, and I was nominally a political hire. I'd worked with the executive producer before, and both of these gentlemen had people they wanted for my job, and they didn't win, and they weren't happy. And sadly, they weren't mature enough to deal with that. So it was a horrible experience, and was kind of a mutual get shit canned and resign at the same time. It was a Friday evening after we wrapped a week, and myself and the responsible party met like, and I was like, dude, I'm done. And he was like, dude, you're gone. So it was one of those kind of things.
Mm,
And I was sitting out on my back porch in sunny Southern California, enjoying a sunset and having a beer. And I had this crazy mental dialogue happened in my head, and this tiny little voice that I'd never heard before said, "I don't give a fuck if I never make a movie again." And the big loud voice that we all have and hear said, "What? What did you say? Shut up." And the tiny little
mm,
voice said, "No, I'm done, man. I don't like this." And the big loud voice was like, "What do you mean you don't?" And at any rate, this went on and on and on. And it was shocking to me because on a number of levels, I'd never heard that little voice before. I
mm,
thought I loved my job. I didn't know what that little voice was, and I had never consciously contemplated any of what it was saying.
mm,
And so I sat with that for a long time. And and I mean like days, I don't mean I didn't get up, whatever. But I sat with that for a long time. And gradually it occurred to me that was the voice of my heart. The big loud voice is the voice in our head, and we all have one. That's the tiny, soft, whispering voice in our heart that we're all programmed to not hear. And gradually, as I sat with that, I kind of stopped doing things. because I'm a doer. I'm not,
Mhm.
at that point, I was a doer. I wasn't a beer. I was a doer. And I just kind of stopped. Like, I wasn't entertaining. I wasn't cooking dinner for friends. I wasn't cleaning the house. I wasn't getting my next gig. I wasn't like whatever. And at first I was like, boy, this really sucks, man. Like, I don't have a movie to work on. I don't have any ambition to go and get another one. It was all very negative at the beginning
Mhm.
because, like, I don't have what I do. I'm not who I
It's a
was. I
life
don't have
change, yeah.
what I had, whatever. And it must have taken like 3 days, idiot that I am, before I realized this is what it means to be calm.
Hmm.
This is what being means, not doing, being. To be calm and to be tranquil, but even more importantly, that it's so okay to be that. And that was revelatory to me. I had
Yeah.
never in my life ever, I mean, ever, never felt like that.
If you got
So,
that in 3 days, that's pretty good because it normally takes 3 lifetimes to figure that out, but yeah, 3
I
days,
don't
not
know,
bad.
man. And then in that like vacuum, I was like, wow, like you kind of kick back. You're like, wow, this is kind of cool. And savoring that. And then, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So that
But
immediate transition was
sure.
challenging to say the least.
Well, I'm sure it wasn't just a matter of I mean, I can see what you mean in 3 days, maybe you had an epiphany, but, your journey then eventually took you across 4 continents and, 10 years later or
Oh,
whatever.
yeah.
What was there a moment where you felt like you didn't hear the loud voice anymore, it wasn't there anymore, like, and "Yeah, I'm finally on the right
Yeah.
path." When was
Right.
that?
So after it all happened in a matter of weeks. So now I'm chilling, right? I don't have anywhere to be. Like, networking with people, fuck it, who cares, man? I'm done. And
Mm.
that was the thing. As soon as I realized it was cool to be calm, was the
Mhm,
moment I realized I'm done.
mhm,
I'm so done. I'm not going back. This isn't like temporary beauty. This isn't like, okay, take 3 days to recover. What I was like, fucking done. And then a previous conversation came back to me that I'd been having for quite a while with the big loud voice of, what would I do if I didn't do this?
mm,
Because I mean, at some point, many of us have that thought in our head. What would I do if I didn't do this? And, well, you don't know how to do anything else. You got to do this, or like
mhm.
whatever. And so I was still sitting out there. I made a new habit of that. But my mother was an ESL teacher. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago. I was living in Los Angeles at that time, and my precious blue-eyed mother, who is non-college educated, was teaching ESL voluntarily in a Korean church.
I was gonna say
You
for
know,
the people who are unaware, ESL is
English
teaching
as a
English as
second
a second language, correct?
English as a second language,
Right,
ESL in its letter form.
right.
And she was rocking it, man. And for some reason that like kind of dropped into my consciousness, and I was like, oh my god, English. I'm a language person. I speak 5 languages. I've always been into language. And Los Angeles is crawling with like Mexicans and Iranians and like people who need language. And I've traveled around the world, and it's easy for me to talk to people, and I'm a really good listener, and like, and I got, oh my God, oh. And then I started researching this. And regardless of where that led to, I found a program at UCLA, and I went to UCLA and got certified to do that for a living, blah, blah, blah. But the real point is, so many people today are very worried about and anxious about, what is my purpose?
Mhm.
What am I supposed to be doing? It's a human, it's part of our, it's one of the common denominators of humanity. Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? I work in this miserable corporate fucking job. What is the deal? And to my way of thinking, we don't have a purpose, but we're here to be us. And we're here to be loved and to be love, but here to be us. And so another part of being human is, well, where's the proof? How can I tell? How do I know if I'm doing the right thing? How can I tell?
Right.
You can tell when you're fucking obsessed.
Hmm.
So when this teaching English as a second language thing happened to me, mentally, it was to the exclusion of everything else. And while I took my hike in the morning, I was thinking about it. While I was having my coffee, I had a ritual, right? We all do morning coffee, and I'd read a book, and no. Morning coffee and thinking about doing this. So when it becomes an obsession, when it blocks out other things from which you've derived a sense of gratification or relaxation or pleasure, and you're just like focused on that, that's how you know.
Yeah, well, there's your
And that's
passion
what
right there.
happened
There's
to
your
me.
passion. Well, Ian's passion for most of his life has been this book, and now putting it into a TV series. Ian, what questions do you have for Jennifer? Because Jennifer, you're a little different type of guest than we normally have. Because normally we've got industry insiders, and you were an insider, but we've started out by talking about why you got out of it and what you
Right.
did since. But I
Could
want to ask Ian, what could we learn from Jennifer that
could but
for
could
our
we just
project?
could we just finish one tiny little bit more of the story before? And I beg your pardon, Ian, but I know you're a patient, loving man. What the master interviewer didn't ask was, what part does filmmaking still have in your life?
No.
So after a mega adventure that was 10 years and 4 continents, part of how do we know we're doing the right thing is when we're obsessed. But another part of that, what is my purpose thing, is what's in your heart that you cannot escape. And so, no matter in the world where I went, I left the film business like, bye bye, never coming back. But that was indelibly stamped onto my
Mm,
heart. And it came round to bite me in the ass on continents halfway around the world to show me that it was Hollywood I was done with. It wasn't filmmaking. It
mm,
wasn't everything that goes into filmmaking and the creation of a living, breathing entity that at the end of the day is a product. So that's kind of the end. And I beg your pardon if I was offensive with that, but that's like the end part of the story of, it's kind of like the road to samsara, right? You can't escape your fate. And
mm,
we often, because that resides in our hearts and we're so deprogrammed and desensitized and whatever to paying attention to that, we we miss it.
mm.
And I was lucky that I didn't miss it because, as I say, there's no escaping that for me. And
Right.
so it just took a little distance for me to figure out there is no escape, and that I still have a viable way of offering something.
To find out more about the book, visit tjswar.com. And to buy it, click on the Amazon link below. So follow us, join us as we create TJ's War, the $50 million TV series.